Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Influence. I am Kwame. Next to me in person, for only the second time ever in Beyond Influence history, my co-host Scott. And today we have with us a quite an amazing guest, if I'm to say so myself, a great friend of mine. So honored to have him on the show, a public figure who has, in such a seamless way, merged the content creation life with corporate leadership. And so we're really, really excited to learn about that. Despite being a, big star on season 4 of Love is Blind, that's probably one of the least interesting factors about him. He is a very multifaceted human being, so we're excited to have him. Thank you so much for being here with us, Brett Brown.
Thank you. Glad to be here. That was quite the intro. Man, made me feel good about myself. I appreciate that.
Of course, man. You deserve that, brother. How's your week been?
Ah, man, week's been good. I've been, battling like a little bit of a cold. It's weird. I got home from work on Thursday. I took a nap. I woke up with like a runny nose, stinging nose, and I felt nothing all day. I'm like, how does a 4-hour nap turn into a cold? Somebody in medical tell me how. Anyway, I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm good.
I feel like that's the worst possible. Like a nap is the best thing ever.
It is.
And then to wake up with a cold, it's like the worst.
How?
Yeah.
Like the moment I woke up, I was like, wait, what's this? How? I go fine.
Okay, this is a super important question because I think we're divided. 30-minute nap or like a multi-hour nap?
30-minute nap is too short.
100%.
I mean, like,
I'm deeply in the long nap.
I don't nap a whole lot, but when I do, it's like got to be like a minimum of 2 hours.
Whoa. Wow. Okay. That's incredible. I used to have, I had a manager, one of my roles, who was an incredible power napper. He would start lunch with going to get his food, eating it. We have that hour set aside. So he'd set a timer for about 20 minutes and he would just go into an office, put a pillow down, nap, wake back up and be, and it was incredible. I'm kind of like, I would say like I'm a 35 to 40 minute napper.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I go 2 hours, I'm just like, I am disoriented.
Yeah. So it's like you start to go into that deeper level of sleep. So coming out of it is a little, but when I nap is usually in the evenings when I get home.
Okay.
And as long as I don't go over like 2 hours, I can still have a full night of sleep.
Yeah.
There are times where I get home, I fall asleep at like 7. And if I wake up at 11, I'm like, oh my God. My sleep is ruined. Yeah. I can't fall back asleep. So I just play video games.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, we're out here in Portland, Oregon, recording live. I feel like Portland will do that too in the wintertime. It's just like, the dark, gray. Everyone turns into bear mode and starts hibernating. Yep.
Yeah, the perfect nap for me is like, I would say like 5 o'clock shortly after work. I go downstairs to my couch, the gray couch. Yep. I'll turn on, my favorite genre before napping is comedy. So I usually put on Arrested Development or Archer. Right now I'm watching AP Bio, which is a really funny show as well. And then I click play and I usually catch about 10 minutes of the episode and then I'll usually wake up to do you want to watch the next episode?
Oh, yeah. Are you still watching? No.
So thanks for coming on. It's so many interesting things going on in your world. And, Kwame hit on the intro, and I think a lot of people have been introduced to you via Love is Blind, but I think one of the things Kwame and I talk about a lot is just how many different things that you're working on, that you're a part of. And one of the coolest things is how you've been able to successfully, stay really engaged in your career that you worked really hard to get and kind of merge that with, your really awesome creator journey. And so I think for people who don't know, maybe a little bit on your backstory, because it's super cool and kind of how you got started in your career.
Yeah. So let me see. Where do I start? Here? So for people who don't know, I'm originally from North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, which, if you know basketball history, is where Michael Jordan is from. So Michael Jordan's, the high school he went to, Ealing High School, was like maybe less than 5 minutes away from the house I grew up in. Unfortunately, I did not go to that high school because a little bit after, midway through middle school, family ran into some really unfortunate financial situations. Over the course of a summer, we literally lost everything. House, car. We lived in our house for a couple of weeks with no power, no water. We had to move. maybe like 30 minutes away to my grandmother's house, because otherwise we wouldn't have had anywhere to go. And that was kind of I was like 12 years old. So there was no social media at that time. There was no, I lived in a neighborhood. Keeping up with friends was just going to my friend's house and knocking on the door. I didn't have anybody's number because we all live in the same neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So everything happened so abruptly. The friends that I had from kindergarten up, in the span of a month, I lost contact with everybody. So we moved, and I had to basically start from scratch at 12 years old in a small farm town now. And it really changed my personality, made me very introverted. Didn't really have any friends when we moved. Anyway, the bright side of that is that I'd always had an interest in art, drawing. But when that happened, like I had nothing else in my life to attach to. So I really just became super laser focused on getting better at my craft. So any free time that I had was drawing. I mean, I didn't play any sports, not a former athlete. People meet me now. I'm like, yo, man, would you play something in school? I'm like, no, I didn't play anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that unfortunate scenario kind of jump started just like a laser focus into like art and drawing specifically for me. That carried me into pursuing a career in 3D animation right after high school. So I went to a school for a couple of years. It wasn't like a established university. It was like a 2-year trade school to study 3D animation. So I did that for 2 years in Raleigh. And I graduated with a diploma in 3D animation from a school that no one's ever heard of. So yeah, I was on the right track to be successful. Not to mention as a Black male, that is not an industry that most people that look like me pursue. But coming out of school, I was very fortunate. Probably 6 months after I graduated, EA Games had opened up a studio in Raleigh, and I was fortunate enough to get my first industry job like 6 months after school at EA Games. And that was great. I worked there for 6 years, walked into work one day and they shut our studio down. So very common in games. Anyway, that led me to getting a job at a startup game company down in Miami. Went there as a 3D artist. About halfway through, I'm like, this ain't me. I'm not feeling it. Like, I need something new to do. And my girlfriend at the time suggested that I start designing shoes. Very, very random. I started designing shoes for fun. Again, my background's in 3D animation and rendering. I did 3D renders and everything of my designs. Made an Instagram page, start posting up work. Next thing I know, a year later, I got a job offer. I moved to New Hampshire to work at Kohan as a 3D footwear designer. I'm like, okay, whoa, big shift. Miami, New Hampshire, video games, shoes, different worlds. I was there for a year before a recruiter from Nike hit me up on LinkedIn and said, hey, we're looking for 3 footwear designers at Nike. I'm like, whoa, how'd I go from Miami to New Hampshire? I'm a year into footwear. Now Nike is hitting me up.
Yeah.
And then from that led to me getting hired at Nike. So I've been at Nike now for 6 years. I love it. And then, halfway through that, Love is Blind happens.
Yeah.
And anyway, wild story that I'm here in Portland.
Yeah.
That's like the short background of me in a nutshell.
Wow. I mean, you've got a really, really throughout all the conversations we've had, you have a really in-depth, thorough background, and I love hearing your story, man. And, we have a lot of overlap. We went through some tumultuous parts of our journey, and all of it affected us in a certain way that brought us to where we are now. Now that you are in this place in life and, you got yourself a new car.
Beautiful new car.
Beautiful new car. You got yourself a beautiful new house.
Beautiful wife.
Beautiful wife. My goodness, life is beautiful.
Well, life is beautiful.
Do you get a chance to go back home? And when you do, like what's that like the degrees of separation? Like when you are in that presence, how do you feel about where your surroundings?
That's a really interesting question. I probably go home once a year, once or twice a year at this point, and it's honestly it's an interesting experience going home because and I'm sure a lot of people that have left home feel the same way. When you go back home, you feel like you're in a different world almost. It's like either life is the same for a lot of people that are there, or for me, it's that. Plus, then I just realized, like, man, how different my life has gone, like in a good way. It also just puts things in perspective as far as like, I had a vision for myself, I had a dream for myself, and I've done it. And going back home is really just this reminder of like keeping me grounded and where you came from. Whenever me and Tiffany, this was last year actually, whenever I took her back home with me to North Carolina for the first time, I took her to the house that we moved into after we lost everything. And my parents had lived there up until maybe a couple of years ago. House is in, really bad shape right before they left. And it was in bad shape whenever we moved. Rotten floors, open space between the bottom of the wall, roaches, like that was high school for me.
Yeah.
And I took her by the house that, this has been sitting there for a couple of years now. And I'm just like, babe, I want you to see, because, she called me bougie Brett and everything on the show. And she gets on me about having nice things. I'm like, babe, I want you to see, like, this is where it started. And this is not glamorous in any way, shape, or form. So it's really a reminder, and it really keeps me grounded, I'd say, when I go home.
Yeah.
I think it's super interesting. We talk a lot about how these experiences shape people and their personalities. And a lot of people who I've met who are super successful, they have some kind of story like this where there was some motivation that inspired them to overcome. And it was interesting. I was thinking about kind of my own version of that. And, we were fine, but it was like going to thrift stores and eating Tom ramen and, you're not going on fancy vacations. You're not buying all the nicest things. And it was an interesting looking back for so long. I was like, I never wanted to pass that for my kids. I want to do better and like never have them worry about, can we afford to play the sport or whatever. And there's a weird shift because I look back and I'm curious if you feel this way, even though there were certain really bad circumstances. You think about the memories you had, you think about the interactions, like given that house in the bad condition, there's still like probably those times with the grandma or the family where it's like, I look back and I'm not mad about it. And it, like my motivation has shifted now that I'm in a different position. And you kind of go through this arc of like, I'm mad about it. I want to distance myself to being like, okay, I can appreciate pieces of that part of my experience and now lead them to manifesting motivations in different ways rather than like regret, anger, whatever.
Yeah, somebody, it may have been an uncle. I have some uncles in California, and I went to visit, and they were asking me about if I was like upset with kind of how things happened when I was a kid. And I had actually never thought about it until they asked me. And I was like, actually, no, because even though at the time it's like, why? I'm in high school. Like everybody's supposed to have this fun experience in high school. I'm supposed to be talking to girls, I'm supposed to be going to parties, I'm supposed to be thinking about college. And house is in the back of a dirt road, and I'm going home and I don't really have any friends. At the time, it's like, what is this? Fast forward all these years now, and I'm like, actually, that situation like propelled me so far ahead in ways that I didn't realize at the time, in terms of like my maturity, in terms of my drive and motivation, in terms of just owning your story and owning like life happens. What are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Like I never wanted to be the person that life happens and I'm like, well, I was on the track and then this happened and look at me now, but I could have been great. Like, hold up.
Yeah.
Hold up. No, you still could have been great.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, everything happens for a reason. It's very cliche, but
yeah, it's true. Yeah. I don't want to boil it down to a super black and white situation, but sometimes I see this more so often than I like to admit. I used to think life was broken up into multiple sections of so many different varieties of people. But, to be blunt, life is broken up really into two major categories of people. There are winners and there are losers. And it's not to say like If you aren't amounting to everything that you could have been or want to be, that makes you a loser. But the definition of the difference between the two, what separates them, the one like categorically very viable characteristic that makes people winners is grit. It's like, it's not about exactly like what I ended up in. It's knowing that whatever I've been in, I'm willing to keep pushing and propelling and working myself forward. You know what I'm saying? Like Morgan Freeman did not get his first big acting role till he was like 61, right? You know what I'm saying? Like throughout your journey, you're going to face a lot of things, and there's going to be two types of people. And this really dictates your likelihood of success. Is like, when I look at something, do I say, oh, boo-hoo, woe is me, I couldn't do anything about it? Or, hey, take it on the chin. There's going to be another opportunity. I'm going to keep fighting forward. And I think like when I think about my upbringing, I'm very fortunate in where I am as well. Like extremely fortunate. I was born in Ghana, lived there for 8 years. I used to walk a couple miles like as a kid before being 8 years old. Or one of the most like big memories in my life was my uncle told me that we needed to grab some food, like, get some stuff to eat. I should walk to my uncle's and grab us a chicken. And so I remember I like as a kid, like I walked barefoot to my uncle's like farm, which is about a mile away. I grabbed a little chicken, and obviously as a kid, I bonded with the chicken for a little bit.
For an hour.
Brought the chicken back home, and then unfortunately we killed that chicken and had to eat it. But I think about my journey there. I came to America. My parents worked super hard. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. It was the one bedroom was my mom and dad. The other bedroom was me, my brother, and my sister. We all slept in the same bed. You know what I'm saying? So when I think about these things, and funny to reference like North Carolina in itself, one of my favorite, actually my number one favorite rapper is J. Cole. And I saw an interview of him, and people were talking about his like frugality and the way that he spends money. And he's like, listen, I've been broke before. I've had nothing. And all I know is that no matter what I do in life, I don't want to end up back there. So that's what drives me in everything that I need to do and everything that I try to do in this life. So there is such a big motivation, like Scott was saying, like people's life stories. A big part of it is like when you see the most interesting people on earth throughout their journey, they went through a lot of things and decided, I'm going to get through this. And that's what defines a winner for me. So Brett Brown, you are a winner, man. I love seeing the way that you've really made the most of every part of your journey. So like you are one of those people who, when good things happen to you, like I smile. Like when you got your car, remember the first little showing of it, you had a picture, and you took a picture of the e-tron on the...
Oh, yeah. I teased it.
Teased it. And I immediately messaged you. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so hyped. Let me see the car. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, I love that about you. And now with where you are, we don't want to say give us a 6-month or, a 6-year whatever plan, but like, what is the very next thing that you are thinking about accomplishing in life?
Ooh, I know social media is probably going to eat this one up, but I think the actually a friend asked me a similar question a couple of weeks ago. He's like, Brett, seem to have done everything you wanted to do. Like, well, what's the next level for you? And I was like, honestly, I feel like the logical thing is being a parent. Honestly,
okay.
I mean,
you're right. Social media is going to eat.
Oh, I know. I think that up. But I feel like the word selfish, I think, inherently almost sounds bad. Like you don't hear the word selfish and think, oh, great. Mm-hmm. I think for a lot of my life, up until the last couple of years, I've been thankfully selfish.
Yeah.
Because I've moved where I've wanted to move. Mm-hmm. I've taken the opportunities that I've wanted to take. I spent my time the way that I've wanted to spend it. And thankfully, all of those things have been productive and put me in the position that I want to be today. So I have been selfish. And now I think I'm at a point where I'm like, I've had enough selfish. Mm-hmm. I think the next step for me would be do I want to be a parent?
Yeah.
Do you want to start a family? Well, what is that thing? I feel like that's just the only thing for me that I feel like that's uncharted territory. Like I can, talk about, other accomplishments or money or whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. I feel like being a parent and starting a family has a little more value.
I love that. You're going to lose the 4-hour nap, but keep the cold. Yeah. Just be ready for that. It's funny. I love what you said about the selfish piece. And it's funny because I don't think about that in a negative way. There's phases and stages in life when you can focus on things. And there is a power to having a singular focus and being able to progress your career. It was funny because like literally last night, my wife, we're hanging out with Kwame, and she's like, what's up? Are Chelsea and Kwame going to have a kid? And I was like, you know what? I think that they are pursuing, and in the best sense of the word, like they're selfish at the moment. They want to go pursue everything in front of them. And that's okay. I think that's not putting anyone below them. It's not to say they won't have kids or whatever, but I think everyone should be okay that there are moments in your life where you can prioritize a whole variety of different things. And there are moments where you need to work on yourself, you need to work on your career, you need to work on the opportunity in front of you. And I love what you said, because it's just this, you've now arrived at a point where you have that capacity, you have that space to feel ready to go out and bring another human being to the world. It's funny, as a parent, like I think about people who having kids in some of these tough situations are super young. There was no way in my life that I was ready before 30 when we had kids to make that sacrifice, to feel like in a place where I could give all of that attention. And it's just interesting. So I think for everyone out there, it's okay to focus on yourself and want to progress your career. It doesn't mean that you're putting everything else and everyone else aside. And I think you're actually doing your future kid a service by creating a foundation, and your marriage too. Like we talked about this a lot, like, date your spouse, like get to know them, have that time, so that when you enter a kid in a situation, that'll test you more than anything. Yeah. I don't know. It's so tough. And so I think having that foundation, having that shared experience, all of those amazing things, super positive. So
yeah, even for us, and Kwame, you can relate as well, but meeting your person in such a small timeline, we've known and been married for a little bit over 2 years now. So it's not like we had dated for 5 years, 10 years, and then got engaged, and we're engaged for 2 years, and then we got married. And then for me and Tiffany, we were, later in our 30s, but we were thankfully on the same page coming off of Love Is Blind. We're a little bit older, but let's do us for some time. Like, we love to travel. Let's do the trips we want to do. Let's go to the places. Like, let's, again, be selfish for us. So when we do start a family, it's not like, oh, well, we didn't do that trip, or we didn't go and take this opportunity. Neither one of us were in the mind state of, even at our age, of like, hey, it's time to start a family. Like, and if that was the case, we're like, hold up, like, you don't want to travel? You don't want to go to Japan? You don't want to do these things? Should we get a house first? Yeah. So we've been very deliberate about carving the time out for us, doing things we want to do. Hey, let's get a house, get that foundation, get all the building blocks in place before we bring in that thing. So when that thing does happen, everything is there.
Yeah, like get the Hilton brand deal before you have to take before you have to get kids on a big.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, big time. I think, especially in the circumstance that we met, we're almost dating our partners for the first 2 years. Yeah. And so you do have to go through things that like you said, could seem selfish, but you have to explore. You have to really enjoy your lives together, because when the testing of any relationship comes, especially with a child, you're going to have to remember all the exciting times that you had together, and how your foundation is built on, we are strong. We are able to enjoy each other's presence. You know what I'm saying? And so let's fight through these difficult times, because that's what we want to get back to. I myself, going through the experiment, I got a lot of shame from the world, because they were like, oh, he doesn't want to have kids. He just wants to travel. And it's like, yeah. Yeah. Hey, boo me. Right. But if you don't take a chance to explore your life and explore life with your partner and really enjoy things, you build resentment. Yep. Right. You'll have kids, and then you'll be you'll start blaming your kids for you're not letting me travel. And it's it's not their fault, And so you do have to give yourself an opportunity to really live life. So I think that's a really big component of it. Now, obviously we're talking about the way that you met your partner. We won't stay on the whole Love is Blind thing too much, but, I'd love to just dip our toe into, Love is Blind and the experience. It's, we were just talking about how you think a LinkedIn post is kind of what led to it. So just cover for us briefly just the experience of getting cast on Love is Blind.
Yeah, I think whenever we were at Conflict Con the other week with Marshall, I think something came up at dinner and we were talking about what was it? I referenced something about seeing some post on like somebody's Instagram and like everybody just wants to go on these shows and get famous and blah blah blah. Like every time I read these comments, like it annoys me to my core because I'm like, no, not everybody goes on this to be famous, to become an influencer, to get a social media following. Yes, we're all aware that that comes with the territory, but there's no guarantee, A, that your people are going to like you. B, if they do, that brands want to work with you. 3, and if brands even want to work with this, you're going to make the money that you think you're going to make. Yeah. And people will continue to care. None of that is guaranteed. So the fact that people think that everybody goes on this, it's not like this automatic way to have a separate life, which is just ridiculous. But anyway, the whole casting thing, because, we were talking earlier and I was saying that I think really LinkedIn was the reason that I got casted on Love is Blind, because I was hired at Nike in 2018 as a 3D footwear designer. And then COVID hit. I can't get too deep into what I do at Nike because, comms team will probably just be like, nope, shut up. But anyway, during COVID, I kind of leveraged my previous experience as a game developer and kind of started showing a new way of working at Nike. And through that, the right people saw the work, believed in the work, gave me a new title, a new team. I got bumped up to a director position within 3 years of working at Nike. I created my own job. My job did not exist before I got moved into that position. So when that happened, I was like, 4 years ago, I was not thinking about Nike. I have, in 3 years, as a Black male without a college degree and no professional footwear design experience, have now put myself in a director position at one of the biggest companies in the world. Like, God damn, Brett, that's an accomplishment. It's an accomplishment. I was referencing you. So also during COVID, I taught myself how to do portrait photography. So I was like, you know what? I took a portrait of myself and I wrote like a paragraph just kind of saying, hey, I just had this major accomplishment. Like I came from the bottom and this, and that. And I made this post and I'm like, all right, cool. Because I wasn't really that active on LinkedIn. I wake up the next morning, my phone is like, there was a guy at the gym that I have seen every day. The next day I go to the gym and he stops me and he's like, hey man, like, congratulations. Hey, it's like, oh, I'm like, whoa. Like, it just literally, I think this post got like over 2.5 million views, 35,000 likes, comment after comment. I had news publications reaching out to me. But anyway, around that same time, I guess, was when they were casting for Love is Blind. And this would have been like, the same 2-month span. And somebody DM'd me on Instagram, spoke to them. I didn't make the connection at that point in time between LinkedIn and Love is Blind. Anyway, I get casted, I go on the show. Fast forward, coming off of the show and getting married, I messaged the lady who reached out to me that casted me. And I was like, hey, thank you. Who knew that this would have changed my life? And I was like, I'm just curious because everybody was from Seattle. How did you find me? And she said, well, we, at the last minute, decided to start looking into Portland. We knew that Nike was a big employer. So we looked for people on LinkedIn. And she's like, and I saw your post. I saw that you were posting about it on your stories. And I was like, hey, this guy seems pretty interesting. Who knew that a job or promotion and being vulnerable and sharing your story will lead to being cast on a reality TV show and get married. Like,
Yeah.
wild, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's funny how those little serendipitous moments in life, like you don't, you know, you put out the post and maybe you're like, hey, maybe those will catch some attention or tell my story, but you never fathom like the reach and then the impact on the life of some of those casting things. It's interesting. We talked to a lot of people about there are these breaks that happen and being like ready to accept the break and kind of, you know, you weren't even trying to maximize anything off of it, but it you know, I think when the call came, you're like, okay, I'm willing to take the leap and jump. And I think one of the things you hit on earlier was this notion of everyone going on reality TV, trying to get famous, trying to build a following, trying to build brand deals. And it was interesting. I've talked a lot about kind of you on the show. And I think one of the biggest reasons why you resonate with so many people is because you almost didn't care about the show. Like you were so far on the other side where you're like, I'm me. I'm like centered. I'm here to undeniably like be a part of the experience. And it never, there's always the like, do you think they're here for the right reason? Do you not? And like people like have these little moments and it's probably producers and narrative, whatever. But like there are people who are clearly, you can tell they're there for that reason. Then there's the kind of in the middle. And then I think what was so unique is you were just so centered in who you are. You were so focused on your relationship that it was never a question. I think that was really cool. And I think that was part of the reason why even after the show, so many people like really came to enjoy you and your relationship. And it's unique. I think that for a lot of people, just being able to dissociate yourself and not have to be absorbed in like this thing defining me or like, I don't know how to explain it properly, but I just think knowing who you are and allowing yourself to shine through that experience was super impactful. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. No, man. So obviously through the journey that you've gone through, you know, you came off of the show, a lot of amazing things started happening to you. And I think, you know, I say this admittedly, I remember when we first got off of Lowe's, but I was a little jealous, right? Because Brett, man, you were raking in some really cool brand opportunities, you know, as somebody who was authentically themselves and just like lived your life. It seemed like Scott just said, like it resonated with people, and obviously it resonated with the people who represent brands. And so you got a lot of outreach from that. And so I would just, you know, love to unpack a little bit about that beginning of your journey as a content creator and what it felt like to start getting deals.
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't know you felt that way, so thank you for sharing. That whole situation was a really weird time because I'd spoke to some people from previous seasons before, and they're like, you know, you got a window, like you got to take advantage of this and that, and you know, be careful what you say yes to, and it's like everything happens so fast, and then people start reaching out, want to work with you from management side, and it's like, well, I don't know this industry. I don't know this field. Like, how can I trust you? Are you just looking at me for a check because you know that I got a following, or do you actually care about me? But and then just the working with brands and understand, because like I've been in the creative field like my whole life. So when it comes to not just making social media content, but creating something, whether it's video games, whether it's you know, photography, whether it's, you know, footwear, I'm used to working with people who have a say-so in how something comes out from a creative side. So when working with brands, one of the biggest, I guess, adjustments was, okay, well, now I'm working with you, but we're not working for the same company. And the output is actually on my platform, not on yours. Mm-hmm. So why do you get to say what's good or not on my page when it's my audience?
Yeah.
So there were a few times where I went back and forth with brands on deliverables where they approved it, because I'm used to the cycle of a draft. I send something in, hey, I put this together really quick. I'm going to reshoot this, but this is the gist of it, right? And then I send it in. Oh, we love it. Content approved. When can you post? I'm like, hold up. that wasn't supposed to be finished.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, actually, while I was waiting on feedback from you guys, I actually refilmed some of the scenes and I put the reel together the way that I wanted to. Here it is. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. But we actually like the first one. No, I don't like the first one. Can we talk about this some more? Sure. Actually, well, we reviewed it again with the team and we feel pretty confident about the first one. No, I don't like the first one.
Yeah.
And then they eventually caved and, I do the version that I like. But getting used to, and another thing that, in professional experience from a creative side is just because somebody has the authority or power to say yes to it, it doesn't actually always mean that they know the ins and outs of what they're saying yes to, and they're the resident expert on it.
Yeah.
Like when you see a bad movie or you hear bad music or you see a bad ad, you know what? Somebody said yes to that. How does that happen?
Yeah, that is a very good
How
point.
does that happen? That happens because the people that are saying yes, honestly, aren't creatives and, hell yeah, that looks good to me. Sure. I'm not saying that's everybody that works on these brands. I don't want to take a shot at brands. But having been on the creative side, I care a lot about my output and what I do, especially if it's being on my channel. So getting comfortable with working with brands. Also, up until that time, I had never done video content. I had taught myself photography during COVID, and I was doing portraits every weekend before getting on the show. And then now it's like, hey, put together a reel and put together a video. Oh, okay. But me, I want to make best quality stuff. So I don't want to just bring out my iPhone and just throw something together. I'm like, no, I want to be very intentional about this. And I have a bar of what I want things to look like. So learning in front of the world and, that everybody in the reality space that was on the show is looking at what you're doing and saying oh, what was that deal? Oh, that, yeah, I saw his deal. That was kind of whack, people want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it was a lot to deal with in a short amount of time. But I feel very comfortable now when it comes to content creation, all that stuff.
It's so true around the whole decision-making and expertise. I say so many times, and it's a weird thing getting confident as a leader saying, I don't know the best way to do this. That's why we hired you.
Yep.
And it's not in some negative push off of responsibility, but I remember we're going through a rebrand and they're like, we want you to review this color palette. I was like, me? I'm not going to be able to tell you the best color palette and the best way to manifest our logos and design. I can give you my input, but ultimately we're paying you to be a creative director. We're paying you to be a designer to make the right calls. And there's something cool in that too. And I think that it speaks to working with really great creators who have a vision, who have an understanding of their audience and how to best interact with them, to say, I, as brand A, have these goals, but the best way to achieve those goals is actually to release the responsibility and to trust. And, meeting with some creators who I would say are the most mature in the way that they work with brands, before they ever do a deal, they get in a room with the brand and they say, I want you to know me. I want you to know my audience. I want to know you. I want to know what you're trying to accomplish. And it's a very it is a true partnership. And I think them and that mutual trust and saying, hey, if you really trust me, I'm going to represent your brand in the best way. And I'm going to get the best result for what you're trying to achieve. And there has to be a level of trust. So I think it's super cool what you said, where it's just this dictating, I got an MBA from somewhere important and now I'm going to make all the decisions on how to talk to you about your audience. It just doesn't make sense. So I love that. It is weird. There has to be a self-confidence in releasing control though. And it's saying, I'm going to delegate this decision. I'm going to let it go and trust that they have the right answer. They have the right way to approach this.
That is, and thinking about the fact that, you now had an opportunity to represent yourself and the brands that you were working with, just dipping into the fact that you at the same time were, representing one of the biggest brands in the world, you still am, so what was it like, kind of merging those two things when you first started out? Because I know now, like when I look at your Instagram, you have that, little thing in your bio that says my views are my own, which is really important, right? But when we think about like the signing off of going on Love is Blind and then, the journey since then, how did that all come to be? And also, once we answer that, I'd love to touch on the fact that you actually had a really cool partnership with Nike when it came to the like guess the shoe.
Partnership would be a strong word.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe not partnership, but you created content with them, which I thought was really dope. So I'd love to dive into how the Nike and content creation overlap really works.
Honestly, before going on the show, my biggest worry wasn't like, am I going to meet somebody? What's my edit going to be like? My biggest worry was honestly, will this have a negative effect on my career? My career has been like selfishly a thing that I put so much, and I'm very proud of what I've been able to do.
Yeah.
So there was no amount of, I need this to make money. I hope to turn this and that, and I can quit my job. And like, if this affects my career in a negative way, then I made a bad move.
Yeah.
And also understanding that Nike's one of the most visible, most well-known companies in the world.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to know that the Nike guy was on the show. And also like one of my biggest concerns was not even from interactions with potential partners. Like I had watched, at the time that we had did our season, it was only season 2 aired while we were casting, which is wild. They're about to do season 8.
Yeah.
And our season 4 aired last year.
I know.
Anyway. And I had watched the Brazil season. And there was like a situation where there was 2 guys that had a triangle with the girl, and then 2 guys got very like, there was a lot of tension.
Yeah. That was Mac Allister. I remember that.
Well, yeah. No, it was
Was it Mac with the dreads?
Mac David.
Mac David.
Yeah. And I was watching that and I was like, ooh, what would happen if I get in a situation with another guy? Like, let's not even talk about the women.
Yeah.
What happens if I get in a situation with a guy who got an ego or he's territorial, and then I get pulled into some drama with another guy? What if I get pulled into a situation and they edit and then I got to go back to work?
Yeah.
And there's 13,000 people that work on Nike campus, right? So that was honestly my biggest worry, was being in a situation that I lost control of, and then I'd have no control of how it's put together. And then going back to my job and knowing people are talking about me, or feeling like I did something that now puts like the brand in a negative light, like, oh, so you got a Nike employee on here now, and these are the people you employ.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was scary. Thankfully, it didn't go that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I have naturally always had to be aware of, not only am I an employee of Nike, but I'm also a leader.
Yeah.
Which I think adds another layer to it. So I've had to be very aware of, one, I'm on this show, I can't just be saying and doing anything. B, when I come off this show, I can't just be saying and doing everything on social media, because again, now everybody, they put it on the show that I work at Nike. I can't just be out here doing everything. I don't need to be commenting on everybody's stuff. I don't need to be sharing my opinion about everything, because it's inevitable that I share something that comes back to bite me. So juggling those two things, like, I'm not like an official Nike spokesperson. I'm an employee, but I'm not like a Nike spokesperson. But I have to be aware of, I'm a leader, I'm a public figure. I have to be aware that anything that I do is, even if I don't like it, a representation of the brand.
Yeah.
But the thing that you mentioned, that's like that was very random. They literally, somebody from the social media team asked me to do that like a week before, and I was like, oh, absolutely, let's do it. That'd be cool. So that was fun. That was fun. I, holding away on Nike side gets mad at me for saying this, but I wish there was more.
Yeah.
Of that. because every time I meet somebody, and I mean every time I meet somebody, yo, what shoes you wearing?
Yeah.
Man, the number of messages I get on a daily basis about Nike, about working at Nike, about my experience, about, hey, my husband, my son, my daughter, they heard your story and, can you see their stuff or, blah, blah, blah. Being at work and then I meet people and they're just people that I've like been in meetings with for a minute. And then somehow after the fact at like a coffee or something, oh, well, now that we never wanted to say anything, but we're really big fans of you. Like, oh,
Yeah.
Or random people coming up to meet me or I'll bump into people and then they'll be like, man, everybody keeps asking me if I know you. Because everybody keeps asking about this Nike guy that was on Love is Blind. Tiffany was actually, Tiffany was just saying that she has a friend who somehow it came up about, her, me and like seeing me somewhere and hearing that, like the Nike guy is like, oh yeah, that's my husband.
The Nike guy.
Yeah. So like
That's pretty cool.
It's a
You
thing.
can never leave now.
It is a thing. And again, I feel like I'm very much in the middle of two worlds and I have to, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I always wonder this on like a super tactical level, and this probably is super useful for creators who have corporate jobs or aspiring to be creators and have corporate jobs. What is the discussion process with the company around competitive brands or signing off on any was there any discussion about like this is inbounds, this is out of bounds, these are brands you can work with? Because Nike's in a lot, and I imagine if you're in anything in the fashion space, it could be viewed as competitive, it could not be, and I'm just curious how they've approached that with you and how active that dialogue is, man.
I mean, that dialogue has really just been me being aware, but like there have been not a whole lot, but there have been things that have come up with like an athletic brand. I'm like, can't do that.
Yeah.
Basically, just the filter that I have is if it's anything dealing with sport, performance, apparel, or footwear can't do it. Like there's brands that want to send me shoes. Like, yeah, I like the shoe, but even if it's just like a lifestyle shoe, I'm the Nike guy. I can't promote. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. I mean, I don't think there are a lot of companies, and it's funny we can't say some of the names, but some pretty big name celebs who have businesses who are sending cease and desist all over the place, trying to protect their interests. And like, they're promoting a candy bar and they're saying anything in the food space is off limits.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how protective some of these people are, and in non-constructive ways. And so it's cool to see that Nike hasn't really jumped in or tried to assert themselves, and it seems to be taking a really like positive view on things and being supportive there.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal. I think it's funny when we think about, or I guess when I think about my role here at Later, right, where it almost feels like we're trying to like build out this idea of what is it like to have an influencer within an organization, within a corporation. The cool thing is obviously our business is influence. And so what does it look like to have someone with, a good foundation, a good, following, a large size community, really dive into the organization? Because based on where we're going, based on where society and social and influencer are going, it does feel like that is kind of it's such a big perk. And I believe within the next couple of years, it'll almost feel like a requirement or a need to have, right? Because a lot more companies will need to understand all the nuances of working with influencers. That's where marketing is going, And so when we think about the fact that you have all these multifaceted parts of what come together to create Brett Brown and Brett Brown's ability to make money, you did your taxes for the first time, last year as a creator. Yeah, we gonna talk about money. I'd love to know how you think about money, how it all balances out. How you get it all to come together. When you think about the number of deals you're getting, how you allocate money, how you put things to the side, things like that. Like, how do you think about money?
Man, money. That's a whole topic.
That's a whole different podcast. Yeah.
Taxes last year were interesting.
Yeah.
And I hope this doesn't sound weird, but I remember whenever we got our tax bill, whenever we put everything together, and we got the number of what we owe in taxes. It was funny because on one end, I was like, God damn, like, yo. But then the flip side is, I remember saying to Tiffany, I was like, you know what? Think about where we are in life. For me, it was like, think about where I am in life right now. The amount that I paid in taxes last year was actually more than any amount I made in a yearly salary prior to like 5 years ago. Think about that.
Yeah.
No one's happy to pay taxes, but it was also a moment of, I'm successful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're successful. Yeah. What we've been able to do and everything. I mean, yeah. But for me, it's anytime I get paid, like I have like a spreadsheet of whenever I get the brand, the deliverable dates, when the content was approved, what the net payout date is, because as someone it's not like you do a thing, you get paid next week.
Yeah.
Nah, man. There's things I get paid 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God I got like the career, because like if I was in a position where I really needed that, like if you come off this show and you do 5 deals immediately, you may not see that money for another 6 months. Yeah. So it ain't like you could be living in glamorous just because you're making a post. But I just have something that I can keep track of.
Yeah.
What the amount, what the date is, when the net payout date is, so that when it does come to taxes, I have something to reference of like, okay, this was that payment. This is what that was. Okay, like this all looks correct.
Yeah.
But it's very manual. I probably should hire like an accountant or something. But
yeah, so personally, I just downloaded, and this is not, I'm not plugging anything. I'm still new to it. They're not paying me, but maybe they should be. An app called Keeper. And what it does is it allowed me to combine all of my accounts into one app. And then it figured out all the deductions, what can be deducted. And then anything I was unsure of, it allowed me to go through. It was like, select like, hey, do you want to deduct this, and that? And so next year's going to be significantly easier for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a big concern, I think, for a lot of creators, right? Once you get into that space, how do you make sure that you're staying on top of your finances? Because money's coming from a lot of different places. I have 2 agencies that I work with. I have different spreadsheets for both. And then I have obviously my corporate job as well. And then I have some things that I just do on my own as well, like, an appearance, or I do this. Like if I'm doing anything soccer oriented, it's usually me seeking it out, and so I have that as a revenue stream as well. And so it's just like staying on top of all these things. People are becoming more conscious. It used to be, I'm sure last year, if you typed in like accounting for, influencer, you wouldn't have seen anything. Nowadays, when you just type in bookkeeping, one of the first 3 options is bookkeeping or accounting for influencers, right? And so people are starting to understand, like a lot more people are starting to generate money on the side as creators. And so there's definitely a need for making sure that there's something more automated that we can all keep track of the things. So yeah, that was a big thing for me. And I'm happy about it because, man, I was struggling last year.
Sounds like they do need to pay you. That sounds like a old plug.
I mean, hey, Keeper, hit me up.
Oh, cool, Kwame.
But yeah, I mean, like with all those things happening, one of the questions that we ask is, when it comes to the deals that you've had, what are, 1 or 2 of the favorite brands that you've you've partnered with, and it, doesn't have to be like the most money you made on something, but like, yeah, what was it like to partner with certain brands?
I would say the one that I got the most satisfaction in was I did a partnership with Nikon.
I'm not.
And that one I was proud of because one, unlike a lot of other deals that come through, that one actually was related to a skill and something that I enjoyed and a product that I had used before any of this happened. Like I had never done photography prior to 2020 during COVID. And I had bought a Nikon camera, a DSLR, and up until going on Love Is Blind, I think I'd upgraded like 3 times. And then did a lot of portraits, studio lighting, etc. And I had upgraded my camera to a model called a Z6 II mirrorless.
Mm-hmm.
And, I upgraded my camera and I tagged, Nikon. And they messaged me back. Like, oh, we're big fans of you over here. Like, really?
That's a big.
That turned into a deal.
Yeah.
Like a 2-reel story. They did a article on their Nikon creators website.
That's cool.
And they've actually been supportive. Like I tag them when I post something that I do with Nikon. The car photo shoot that I did the other week,
Mm-hmm.
like I tagged them and then they reshared it on their Nikon story. And I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
you don't even like if Nikon didn't pay me anything, I'm not saying that they shouldn't pay me, but I'm just saying if they did it, I still am satisfied because this is actually like probably the most organic and natural partnership that I've done with any brand.
Yeah.
Right. So that one was great. I'd say the 2 others. I mean, Hilton's been a great partner.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the 2nd year that I've been doing an ambassador with them. So that one's like, as much as I love it, that one's the hardest one to juggle because it involves travel.
Mm.
And it's cool, but it's also like earlier this year, I did a boxing match, won first round knockout, Las Vegas. Proud of that. But I tore my labrum and I had surgery in June. But before that happened, I had signed another like a deal to visit properties. So I was like, hey, I just tore my labrum.
Mm-hmm.
I can't travel. I can't really create content for a while. So I pushed the calendar out. So like basically everything, all the travels and everything I did then happened in like a month and a half span.
Mm-hmm.
So for like October, every weekend I was somewhere.
Yeah.
And then have to do the content and then put it together and then send it in. But it's been fun, like visiting properties and kind of having a relationship with a travel brand is really great.
Yeah.
But can be exhausting.
So speaking of boxing, you're an avid boxer. You're going to go do some boxing today, right? I'm training. So you also a celebrity boxer. What is your hot take, opinion? Was the fight rigged between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson?
How much time we got?
I know.
How much time we got here? Oh, yeah. I think for anybody to say that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson is rigged, it's just ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
If we've all heard the term Father Time is undefeated. I don't understand, and this is what social media does today. There was a journalist that I follow a lot. His name was Ariel Helwani, and he did a really good take on this as well. And I think social media, most people, let's be real, do not watch combat sports.
Yeah.
And when I say like, let me rephrase that, are casual watchers of combat sports. Conor McGregor, oh yeah, is he fighting tonight? Oh, let's watch it. Okay, whatever. But they're not watching every UFC fight every weekend. They don't know the names of the fighters and what is good. And they just hear a big name and they think that, oh, this is what's going to happen. The internet sees Mike Tyson. Oh, I remember Mike from the 90s and this and that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, he's going to whoop Jake Paul. Well, guys, Mike is 58 years old. Mike hasn't fought professionally in over like 25 years. And when he did, he didn't look like a world beater. I think his last fight was was it Kevin McBride? I think Mike literally just like kind of quit on his stool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's not like whenever Mike left, Mike was the Mike from the Nikes before before Buster Douglas. So somehow the internet believed that this man for one night is going to channel all the energy of the Spartans and old Mike Everett. And for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, he is going to be Mike Tyson of old. Yeah. And then when it wasn't, it's like, oh, it's rigged.
Yeah.
Put any 58-year-old former professional boxer in there with Jake Paul, and they will lose.
Yeah. Especially if it comes down to decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to Mike's credit, I think that Mike looked better than most 58-year-old boxers would being put in that position.
100%. Yeah, it was funny. It's just funny how the internet can just take something and run with it. It's like, oh, he's pulling punches, his like biting the glove thing, and all the stories. And I laugh because coming back to where we started this whole thing, I'm like, getting a little bit older, you're like, I fell asleep and I took a 4-hour nap and I woke up with a cold. I'm like, we're not even close to 58. And I'm like,
That's not age.
no, I'm just like, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, my knees hurt. And I got 20 years to go. So Tyson. So I can't imagine getting in the ring with anyone. But
yeah, no, quite the journey. You're a big fight guy. And, I think we always think about the really cool connections we've made from, having gone through his experience. We've both connected with some really, really cool people. As a big sports guy, anytime that I talk to a football player or a soccer player, like growing up, I was such a big Tim Howard fan. The goalkeeper for the U.S. And, I did an event with him where it was me, him, Landon Donovan, and Ocho Cinco as like this.
You saw it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm just sitting there and kind of just on my phone to start the day. And, some guy taps on my shoulder and it's Tim Howard. And he's like, hey, what's up, Kwame? Good to meet you, man. Blah, blah, blah. Like me and my wife watched the show. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's so crazy. This is someone that I've, idolized through our life. And I remember like Josie Altidore, who was the striker for the U.S. I saw him at an airport. And I remember it was at the time when I was kind of getting consistently bombarded with people, you know what I mean? So I like walked up to him. I like knew the feeling. I was like, hey, I kind of get annoyed when this happens to me too much. So, if I'm bothering you at all, I see you're on the phone, but like I'm on my way to my gate and I couldn't turn down a chance to say what's up to you. I'm a big fan, been a big fan for forever. Like my name is Kwame, blah, blah, blah. And then, he was a really nice guy. Hey, what's up? Like, great to meet you. And I think he didn't know me at the time, but his wife, Sloane Stevens, I think was a fan of the show. And so we later connected on Instagram. It was like, yeah, he followed me and everything. And like, that was a really cool moment for me, and, people like Tariq or DK, right? Like,
T.O.
Yeah, T.O. Terrell is a huge fan of Love is Blind.
That was what we had did an event in Seattle last week, and T.O. was there, and I was like, yo, that's T.O. And I was so nervous to go say something, so Tiffany went and spoke to him, and then I came up after the fact, and he was super cool. And he was like, oh, yeah, like you're the Nike guy, right?
Nike guy, I guess.
Like, yo, T.I. knows who I am, and he knows a little bit of my story.
Yeah.
Yo, that's dope.
And he has watch parties. Like, he's a massive fan.
Did you see him at the SPs?
I did see him at the SPs, yeah. That's where I learned, like he came up, they were talking, Marshall and him were talking, and I was like, I walked up and I was like, all right, y'all not going to talk to T.O. without me. And I'm like, hey, what's up, man? My name is Kwame. He's like, man, I know who you are. Do you have any, people that you've met throughout this experience that have really shocked you to yourself? I know you obviously just said T.O., but anybody else that you're just like, wow, this is really, I know like John Anik, which is a huge person for you, but like, yeah, what are some people that you've encountered that you've been like, wow, this was a really cool part of like being famous, quote unquote?
Yeah, I would say, the T.O. interaction, John Anik, and if you're listening, you don't know, John Anik is like one of the commentators for the UFC, so he pretty much calls every single fight, and I'm a huge UFC fan, so I think him and Megan Olivia, who is also like a commentator for the UFC, like both of them like reached out to me through social media, like separate. I'm like, yo, I'm such a UFC fan. And John gave me his number. We've texted back and forth. We went to the UFC fight at the Sphere a few months ago, and I was like, yo, just letting you know we're going to be there. He's like, hey, hopefully you run into, and we ran into him.
Yeah.
He, spoke, super cool. Yeah. I was like, man, that's cool. Let's see, who Who else? Who else?
We got to get your opinion on who John Jones' next fight should be.
Brett Brown.
We could do a whole podcast on fights. We could do a
I know we do.
podcast on fights. Yeah, I'd say those.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tariq Woolen for the cornerback for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
He's been super cool. He gave us some tickets last year. Met up with him. He was in Portland actually randomly a few months ago and bumped into him. And I'm like, yo, what's up?
Yeah.
Tiffany, I think she had went to the Renaissance LA concert last year. And she's like, yeah, I was talking to like Brandy, and Brandy knew who I was. And she's like, I was walking because they had floor seats, and she's like, I'm walking to my seat, and people were like, Tiffany. She's like, I'm at a Beyonce concert, and people are recognizing me. Like, that's wild.
It's so surreal.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, that's super cool, man. And I mean, like, I think I always say this to you. Issa Rae, who's like, my goodness, like, you know, a goddess of you know, the entertainment like industry for me and, you know, for a lot of people, was on a podcast and was like, oh yeah, I love Brett and Tiffany.
Yeah. And what's funny is, I guess her team had sent us that clip, or they had emailed us about it. It was like, hey, like your name came up. Yeah, like, oh. Could I reshare it? I was like, yeah, I'll reshare it on my story or a post. And I was like, you know, just hearing people that you follow and admire just in any way acknowledge, not that I need it or care that much about it, but it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I just find it's like, oh, you're talking about me?
Is that like, oh, you know who I am? So if I came up and said hi to you, it wouldn't be like, who are you? You'd be like, oh, you Brett.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, man. So, you know, we've had a really good conversation so far. And, you know, as we wind down to our last few questions here, man, you know, another one that we like to ask, I know Scott loves to ask this one. I'm taking all of Scott's questions today. I'm sorry, man. But, you know, do you have, you've worked with some amazing brands, Nikon, obviously. You know, you've done just some content with Nike, Hilton, like some incredible aspirational brands for a lot of other creators. Microsoft.
Adobe.
Wow.
Fitness, Optimum Nutrition,
corporate name.
Yeah, right. No, so do you still have any aspirational brands that you just think in the back of your mind, you're like, you know what, if they hit me up tomorrow, I would be so overwhelmingly excited?
I really wanted a car brand, to be honest. I really wanted a car brand. You know, I drive an Audi now. I had a BMW before. That would have been cool. But like, once you buy a car, like, I can't get a car brand. You know, a partnership with a brand. It's like, well, hey, everybody knows what I drive.
Yeah.
Like Nikon from the photography standpoint was cool. I would love to. I mean, so I don't think it's a specific brand per se, but I think I would love to partner with a brand in like a unique way. Meaning, I feel like a lot of partnerships are, we got this thing and we want you to promote it. Like, here's the thing, here's what you got to say, you know, do this and whatever. I would love to partner with a brand and say, hey, we have this thing, but we actually want to bring you on to help like create a creative or to photograph the product with the influencer or kind of create the content, so to speak, or curate like what the output is and less about like just being the person, like here's a shiny thing. I would love to work with the brand on like a more creative capacity. Because I'm a creative. And again, it's what I've been doing my whole career. Not, you know, not necessarily brand marketing and whatnot, but I don't think, I was talking to somebody at work the other day actually, and people ask me like, who does your content? And I'm like, I do. I film, I edit, I do everything. And we're like, really? I'm like, yeah. They're like, wow, well, it looks so professional. Like, I'm not a marketer, but one of the things that I'm proud of, and one of the things I think can get in the way of my time, is I like to do things and get better at things and create new skills.
Yeah.
And kind of content creation, like real creation. Like we all know that even when it comes to brands and the content that you produce, I can look at content that some people make for a brand. I'm like, it wasn't compelling. I'm sure it got the job done. It hit the brief. I'm sure it got the, engagement that it needed. But again, as a creative, very visual person, like my biggest inspirations, actually, I think one of the questions that you sent me was about, are there any creators you follow? And honestly, I don't follow a lot of creators.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like a lot of my inspiration is really like film. Like when I think about how to shoot something, I'm not looking at what other creators do. I'm thinking about how was this shot in a movie? Like I kind of think of the stuff that I do is I want it to be very aesthetically like sound. It's where somebody sees it, they think that I hired like a professional editor to do it. And I love that reaction saying, no, actually I did that. Like that's satisfying to me. Past the paycheck.
I love that. It made me think about it was really cool to cap off Wendy's first season. I think it was like Fanatics and a couple other brands. They actually made like a museum of all like the greats and their rookie years, and they made like this exhibit, and then they had him.
Oh, I saw that.
Did you see this?
Yeah.
And it was like the cinematography of it, the storytelling, like the production value that went into that, and like they created this moment for him to. It was super, super cool, and it made me think of like, how do you elevate like content creation? How do you elevate an experience and storytelling in like this really unique way? Because you could have just said Wemby, like crazy tall, great basketball player, like token piece of content, but like the production value that went into that, and that was professional for sure. It's not just a creator randomly creating things, but I love that they took the time, the energy to say, how do we tell this story in a unique, compelling way? How do we actually create a meaningful? There's no way he doesn't remember that for his whole life. Like, and I just think those are the cool things. And I think about when brands go that way. We talked to Pinterest last week, and they created this entire Coachella experience where they would bring you in and like design your fit and like take photos and create this whole experiential moment. I just think there's so many cool creative ways to go and express more than just, hey, here's some shoes, or here's a random thing. So I love the approach you're taking. And I think, for creators, leaning into a more creative approach, leaning into a storytelling approach, and same for brands, and then like activating in really unique and compelling ways is super cool. So, well, it's amazing having you on the podcast. As we wrap up, anything that you want our listeners to walk away with as kind of a final message for the episode.
Not everybody goes on reality TV to become an influencer and to drop their job and to get famous. Not everybody does that.
Oh,
that's the takeaway.
That's the takeaway. You know what? Hey, summed up perfectly. That's Brett Brown. He's going to tell you the truth. He's going to look you in the eye when he does it. Man, it's been a great conversation. I think we can both admit to that. And we thank you for taking the time here on a Saturday morning to come do this with us before you go ahead with the rest of your day. We had a really, really great, compelling conversation, and obviously wish you the best of luck in everything, to come. If people want to find you on social, obviously most people can already, but how would they find you on social and where it is?
Brett Brown, easy to find.
Perfect. The Brett Brown, the Audi driving, sneaker wearing, shoe creating, design director himself. Brett, thanks again for being with us today, man. Thank you everyone for joining us. For now, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.